Here we are again, Dr. Homebrew. We're back in the studio, in the virtual studio, of course, on Zoom, and we're drinking beer that is not brewed by us, and it's not commercial beer, which I appreciate. You know, it's few and far between, I guess. Then we're actually, you know what? That's
People
a correction. I stand corrected. We have been getting a much more homebrew.
people are sending us beer lately, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, it's been good. It's been nice to sort of get back in. It's like we took a vacation. You
Yeah.
know, hit the um community bar, hit the resort bar for a bit and drank some commercial beers and ran through those. And now we're back, we're back home dealing with our lovely lives. We have Colin back on the show. Colin sent a cold IPA, so we're going to be chatting about his beer and tasting that and going through that. And then in the second segment, we're going to be talking about what even a cold IPA actually is, how to make it the right way, what it isn't also, and what not to do, and then call it a cold IPA because there are subtleties to it. And I can't pretend that I know exactly what's going on with them, but it's a new style we're all learning here together. So if you're interested in cold IPA, this is the show for you.
Colin might be the only person on here who's brewed one.
Probably, I would bet. I mean, unless Brian Shaw is keeping secrets.
Oh yeah, I'm just brewing I've been brewing like every other day for like the past 6 years. I just don't tell you guys.
Yeah, you're
I
the next
got
Jamil.
like gallons and gallons and gallons of beers out in my garage. It's fantastic. So I keep my girlish figure.
That's right. But before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor, 5-Star Chemicals. You go to 5starchemicals.com today and learn the best way to clean and sanitize your home brewing equipment. While you're there, check out the 5-Star Homebrew Club and go there, hit the link, join it. It's free, absolutely free, of course. And they send you tips and tricks. They let you try free stuff. Maybe even you get some free merch. Who knows what's going on? But you learn a little bit each time they mail you. And they don't email you, like a whole lot. They don't spam you. Like some of these companies, man, I can't understand. I don't understand. I can't stand it. When people they'll do like 3 or 4 emails like a week, these advertising emails, and it's like, what are you doing to me? Who sits there and generates this content and thinks it's okay just to spam? Constant messaging, constant
Yeah.
messaging.
It's too much.
It's way
It's like
too
when you
much.
buy
I hate it.
something and you buy it from a new place and you buy one thing, and you're
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, send me an email now and then with like a sale or something. Yeah, and you get like 1 or 2 a day. It's
It's
like,
impossible, dude.
no,
Yeah.
I don't want that. I
Or you don't
bought
even
one
sign
thing
up
from
for
you
it.
one time. Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
even tell you, and then you just suddenly like, oh, here's this 40% off this thing that you already bought. Awesome.
Yeah, I bought an egg beater, and now it's like showing me the next level egg beater that like will whip your eggs even a little faster, and it costs $10 more. But and then there's the super deluxe egg beater,
Yep.
and like I've got an egg beater, dude.
Yeah, it's called
Okay.
a fork. It's
Or like
fine.
even
whiskey.
worse is like you go to some other city and like you go to a restaurant and you put your credit card to like the Square or whatever, and then you start getting emails like 4 months later, like twice a week from some restaurant you went to once in a place you drove through, 400 miles away. Like, no, even if you liked it, like I'm not going to go back. I'm going to forget that you're there. I'm not going to drive 400 miles to go eat at your place, dude.
It's weird, man.
Yeah.
It's weird. But who won't do that is 5-Star. 5-Star will not do that to you. And you join the club. Your information is sacred to them.
And neither will Dr. Homebrew. We won't spam you either. Like, hey, want to buy some homebrew? Oh, wait, I can't sell you homebrew.
Yeah,
I make
Go
no
make your
guarantees that
own.
I won't spam you, but I probably won't.
we won't spam you. Although I do have like a bunch of shows to release. I somehow got behind on releasing shows. And I have one I'm going to release tomorrow, and then I think then that's it. And then we have these two that we're going to do tonight. So I'm a little behind, but I don't care anymore. I realize I need a vacation, everybody. I need a break from thinking about content for the last, I don't know, 20 years.
Go hit
Constantly.
the commercial beer bar you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know where you should go for a vacation then is Disneyland.
No, I'm not going anywhere, dude. Are you kidding me? Trying to end up in the hospital? Hell no, dude. Absolutely not. But anyway, Colin, what's up, man? Welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Cold IPA. What's your deal with that? Is that something you've done Before you jumping on the hype train, are you a hype man brewer?
So I'm a lager brewer. I like brewing lagers,
There
and
you
I
go.
like hops. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay, interesting. All
And it
right.
gives me an excuse to brew with rice in a way that's craft beer acceptable now. So
Okay.
I made the cold IPA extra cold. Wow. There's a
Yeah,
story.
He's
There's a
got
little
it in
story.
He's got it in. Well, explain what you're doing. You just show the camera.
I put it in an ice bath. There's
you
a
go.
story, but because I accidentally gave you guys too many bottles and I thought I had another bottle, but then I only had the one that I judged last night. And sadly I left it sitting out. And so it's not going to be great, or I might get an essence of what it was, but I judged it late last night, and now I'm going to be judging the dregs of what was left that have blown off all the carbonation on my counter last night. But it will be cold.
Nice.
Yeah,
All right.
it was a weird ass beer distribution prior to the show. Not that the listeners really care about all the details. Suffice it to say, there was a lot of weirdness, and the important thing is we all got at least one bottle of every beer for tonight's show.
There you go. All right, Shar. Well, since we're letting Cooper's beer kind of chill out a little bit, why don't you start off, and we'll get into Colin's beer.
All right. No, it sounds good. Colin, thanks for sharing your beer. You know, I would ask you the question I usually ask at the beginning of every episode, but you've been on like a number of times, and we all know if you're in a club, what club it is. And if the listeners really care, I encourage them to go back in the archives, at thebrewingnetwork.com. Just click on Dr. Homebrew and just go back and re-listen to some of those classic old recent episodes that have you to get the full information about you and what you're about. So, I'm going to, what I will start off though.
The hell's wrong with you?
Coop,
The
I don't
hell's
think we have
wrong with
time
you?
to list that out right
Jesus
now,
Christ.
Jason.
All right.
There's not, we can do a whole separate show like Jay-Z's medical corner about like
Better-
Brian's mental health corner. I don't know.
BetterHelp.com. That's all I'm
Exactly. Every other podcast has ads for them. I wonder if we do.
I don't know.
So before the show, Coop and I were texting about, well, what should we judge this cold IPA as? Because there is no BJCP style for cold IPA at the moment. It's more of a commercial thing. And even looking at the Brewers Association, BJCP guidelines, there isn't a separate cold IPA, which I find kind of interesting, because the BA is usually on top of that. And someone hints at a new style, and they'll have 3 versions of it in the Brewers Association guidelines. But I had suggested to Coop, we'll judge this as a specialty IPA. And he whipped out something I had never heard of before, which is
yes, I did.
Yeah, it was the BJCP has a. Let me go back here. There's a page, and I had it on my phone. I don't have it on my computer, where if it will help you decide what category to put stuff in.
The page is called bjcp.org/style-entry/suggestions and that will get you there. So, or just search style entry suggestions BJCP and you'll come to this page.
Yeah, I think which I think is great. And I'll tell you what, I love the BJCP. I've been in the BJCP for 20 plus years. I'm not I'm not saying anything bad about the BJCP here. Just sometimes the website can be a little hard to navigate and a little hard to find out things you want to find out. And it wasn't until I was today years old as a Grandmaster 1 judge that I knew there was such a page. So that's, for listeners out there, this is really interesting. It lists out a bunch of things that are not quite styles yet, but that people like to enter in competition, including, Hoppy Weizenbock. I never heard about that one. Session IPA, different kinds of IPA.
Pastry stouts,
Belgian stouts, and Mexican lager. Hey, this is an important thing for maybe the next a few shows from now. Hint, hint. 2A international pale lager, specify Mexican lager. Okay.
Now, if you're wondering where to put that stick of alt beer, you can figure out where to put it. You can stick it right in the right category. 27.
Stick it in 27. I've never heard of a Koyt, a Koyt. That's a new one on me, but I need to go. if I do a Google search for that, the first thing that comes up is 97.1 KOYT, low power FM community radio for Anza, California. So the listeners should now be grateful that I went to law school and not radio school. I can't imagine having lived the WKRP lifestyle. A Dutch style Kuit or Coit style of beer, popular in the Netherlands from 1400 to 1550. So I don't know who got in there, went through the Guardian of Forever or something and went back and figured out the details of what that thing tasted like. But thanks to them. Anyway, yeah, listeners, when you're sending us beer or you're entering it in competition, that's a great page. And I'm really glad, Coop, thank you for pointing that out to me. I never knew that existed.
You're welcome.
And that's something that, us and the listeners can all utilize when we're brewing some, oddball type styles that don't have their own thing in the guidelines.
If you ever brew a Florida Vice or a Gruit or a Japanese rice lager, now you'll know what to do.
Have we not talked about Colin's beer yet?
No.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, no.
No.
You can just tune out for a while. We're going to jabber on about this page for about 10 more minutes.
And,
All right.
Florida Vice is kind of like that Catarina Sour. But
Let's get into Colin's beer, huh, guys?
it's an audio medium, but not a visual medium. But Colin's
Let's
got
get
his
into
forehead in his head.
Let's get into
now.
Colin's beer,
The,
huh,
the,
guys?
long, the,
All right.
the long and short of it is this is a 34B. Colin's beer is a cold IPA. It's to be judged as a 34B, which is a
Mixed style beer.
Get into
Yes.
Colin's beer, huh, guys?
Like IPA and American lager crossed,
Yeah.
kind of.
This is
Exactly.
Brian Schar's time. Brian has the floor. I'm waiting for Brian to get into
Okay.
Colin's beer, huh?
Okay.
Okay.
So aroma. But first off, bottle inspection. It's a bottle. I checked that box, appropriate size, cap, fill level, label removal. Good job on that. Aroma. Initially, I got kind of a malty, but also kind of a cellar-like aroma. I have cellar-Y, like cellar-y. That's pun not intended. A little bit like a beer de garde, which I thought was weird because I could hardly think of two things more unlike one another than a cold IPA and a beer de
Interesting.
garde. They're
Yeah,
both good.
I got more of like a baby puke. Sort of sulfury kind of baby vomit yeasty thing maybe, but this beer is crystal clear. So I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah.
celery, interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what's weird. Well, you're closer to having a baby than I am. I mean, my daughter is 16 and yours is, much less old than that. And I've kind of blocked out the whole baby vomit aroma. But I'll tell you what's weird. I cracked this beer about 2.5 hours ago. I judged it about 2.5 hours ago, kind of cold. And I thought, well, as it warms up, it's going to get worse, but I'm not going to do Colin dirty like that. I'm going to leave the scores the way they are, just talk about what I was tasting. I actually don't get that cellar beer de garde aroma now. And I'm kind of going back to that. And it smells a lot cleaner. I'm still not getting the level of hop aroma that I would want to get from a cold IPA, but I'm not getting that kind of unpleasant, musty character that I did before. So I don't know, maybe that's something that blew off. Maybe it was something that I touched. I was telling Cooper before the show, I was making dinner. I had some stuff on my hands. I made sure I went back and washed them thoroughly so that I wasn't getting any weirdness. I still smelled that, but I don't now. So I'm going to chalk that up to, just judge, something happened to my nose. I don't know what.
Are
I'm
you
not
saying
getting
the
that
beer
now.
smells like celery or it smells cellar-like, like a cellar?
Cellar-like.
Okay.
I'd say it smelled cellar-like to me. And that cellar-y was a joke. It wasn't really maybe a joke as much as a thing that I said. Utterance that I made.
I'm beginning to understand this humor thing you speak of.
Yeah, and it's crazy. But yeah, I'm still not. I had a note that I wasn't getting there's no obvious hop aroma, and I still sort of stand by that. I'm crossing out my musty comment because something like that, if it's truly moldy, truly musty, it's not going to get better as the beer warms up. It's going to get worse. It's not a type of thing that blows off. If it's going to blow off, it almost always is something that blows off in the first 5 to 10 seconds. So I'm moving up. I had given this a 6 before. I'm moving that up to an 8 because user error on that by me. Yeah, and I'm trying real hard to get that must. I'm not getting that. Appearance 3 out of 3. This beer is crystal clear, like JP had said. I mean, I'm holding this up to the camera, and it's like any kind of webcam or whatever. It's a mess, but you can tell from doing that this sample is crystal clear. Head is low and persistent. Color is pale straw. It almost might be too light for this style, but I'm rarely gonna knock a point for a beer being too light, unless you have one of those weird stouts that's like ooh, we gotcha. It's really clear and yellow and whatever. But yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. And the head, there isn't a specific style for this. A lot of IPAs, I mean, you really want, especially like a hazy IPA, the styles really want you to have a big, thick, heroic head that lasts forever. It's not. This is a 34B mixed style. I'm not going to slag you for having a head that's low but persistent. So 3 out of 3. The flavor, initially the flavor is malty and slightly musty. Again, I'm going to amend this because just like with the aroma, I'm not getting that mustiness in the flavor either now.
Well, that's good, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a plus. There's no apparent, I do stand by, I made a note, there's no apparent hop flavor. I'll note that the hop flavor is there, it's very low, and it's just now starting to come out, and I'd say it's probably in the citrus family, but frankly, it's hard to tell because to me, it's just sitting there at a very low level. Bitterness is low. Malt is actually kind of low, but they balance each other out in mid palate. It's well attenuated. Finish is the finish is longer than it was. The finish is fast and then kind of falls off a cliff was my note. I wouldn't say right now it falls off a cliff. It's still kind of on the short end of how long a finish of a beer typically lasts, but it's pleasant. It's balanced slightly toward bitter. So I give that a 12 out of 20. Mouthfeel. Carbonation is low, body's medium, no warming. It's neither creamy nor astringent. I think the carbonation is a little lower than you'd really want for this style. So I knocked off a point for that and gave it a 4 for mouthfeel. Overall impression, I'm going to come up a little bit on that because, again, it's gotten better as it warms up. And Colin, congratulations, because that almost never happens to any beer where it gets better as it sits and warms up. So thank you for sharing. My initial note was, I wondered if something weird happened to this bottle or something happened weird during fermentation, just because of the strangeness of that mustiness. And I noted the label was a little moldy, which I had thought might have something to do with, maybe the bottle was stored somewhere that was maybe a little moldy, but as it warms up, I don't think that's really a factor. I'm not getting the impression this is an older bottle. I mean, it doesn't taste stale. I thought at first maybe that was it. Maybe it's musty and a little cellar-like because it might be old. I don't know. But I wonder if it's just, I'll be curious later on to hear how you hopped this. I wonder if maybe there was some odd product that might be, it might have been old or some, sitting on the shelf for a while. Maybe it's some brand new. There's so much on the market now for home brewers as well as professional brewers for hop products. It maybe it's some kind of funky new, cryo squared thing that I haven't heard of that just ended up having a weird character. But I think my math is right. Overall, I gave you 33 out of 50. I think it's pleasant. It's well made. I think there's some issues with hop flavor. But also wonder if that might have had something to do with making an IPA as essentially a lager or a steam beer style. The yeast tends to grab onto those hop polyphenols. And maybe the fact that it was lager, maybe I don't know if you did the Narcissus method and kind of cranked this through in a couple of weeks. It doesn't taste like it. Usually those kind of beers have a little bit of a fermentation fusel type of feel to them or taste to them. Maybe just having the beer lager for a few weeks, if you did that, might have caused that yeast to be in contact with the hops longer and pulled some of that character out. I don't know, but overall, and 33 is that's very good. I think that's. I apologize for judging it harshly before you even knew what I had done. Good job. I appreciate you sharing, and I'm going to throw it over to Coop.
All right, very good.
Well, okay. Yeah, I was struggling with this beer too. I didn't get musty, but I'll talk about the process here. So I'm doing a bathroom remodel, and I had some work to do last night. And then I had to go get my hair cut. And
Colin,
then of course,
what's up, man?
after the
I'm
haircut,
sorry.
I
you
had
can't hear me
to.
because you're on the same pod as these.
I had to
jokers.
stop. At the,
it's all funny. It's all fun and games. And
I had to
JP
stop and
wants
do
to
some
not
research
be here right now. Go ahead, Cooper.
I had a Pliny. Okay, sorry, I had a Pliny before I judged this, and I judged it second after another beer. And I read what I wrote this morning, and it was a little rough. And now I'm having to retaste this beer that's been sitting out all night. So, JP,
it's like our first show. It's like our first show.
apologize.
We've never done this before.
We don't know what we're doing.
What's a show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cooper,
Here's what I
beer.
got.
All right.
It's got a light, non-fruity ferment aroma. Not super fruity, no obvious DMS or a diacetyl. It's got a bit of a sulfury edge, like a lager. Low and clean hops. It's slightly hopped only, kind of an herbal and faint citrusy resiny thing. I got something that I was like, what is this? Something reminiscent of like pencil lead. And I just wrote pencil lead, even though I didn't want to write that on a score sheet, but I did. And then I'm smelling it again. I was like, what is it? Pencil lead? No, wood shaving? No, but as I smell it again, I feel like what I'm getting is that like odd pumpkin skin acetaldehyde. And I'm getting, as it's warmed and it's not carbonated very much anymore, I'm just smelling the beer. And I feel like there's a little acetaldehyde in here. Not heavy, but just enough to give it that pumpkin skin, kind of green apple-y edge, but not really green apple-y to me.
Yeah, not to interrupt, Coop. Now that you say it, yeah, I think I get like that little, sometimes I can kind of gloss over that pumpkin skin type of acetaldehyde if it's at a really low level like this. And I think you're right.
Pumpkin skin.
Yeah, pumpkin skin. The beer was very beautiful last night, bright and clear, yellow gold color. I think that's fine for the color. It's nice and light, but they can be pretty light. Fine white head that persisted well. Low whitish stand of fine white bubbles and persistent foam. So yeah, kind of got repetitive there. I was half asleep when I wrote this. The flavor, cleanly malty with a low breadiness. The hops shine through, mellow. And there's a nice citrus and a little earthy, a little faint piney, resiny thing, but it's low. Medium, medium low, I guess you could say. It had a little bit of, not too much bitterness, medium low bitterness. But yeah, it just was a little bit rough. Touch of that bitterness lingered into the aftertaste too, but it wasn't like heavy bitterness. It's just something about the water with the lightness of the beer, maybe that has a little minerally edge, perhaps. But really, in the mouthfeel, it wasn't too rough or biting. Kind of had a medium light body, medium carbonation. No astringency or anything really bad there. Kind of there. It's the body. It's fairly dry. It's nice. The finish, I mean. But yeah, in the end, the cold IPA, it is more on the kind of lagery side, and you don't want a cold IPA to come across like an IPL, even though you're taking possibly a lager yeast or a Kolsch yeast, fermenting it at slightly warmer temperatures than you would a lager. Maybe lower 60s is typical, but it's playing like a lager. As you say, you're in, you're a lager brewer, you enjoy brewing lagers, and it is kind of a something, if you have a lot of lager yeast around, could be a great beer to make with some of that extra stuff. But if you do it too much like you make your lagers, it's going to play a little differently, more like an IPL maybe. Then the flavor that acetaldehyde isn't really heavy either, and there's enough to cover it up where it keeps it, it's kind of in there, but it's not like invading too much. Overall, I would just say, if you clean up that little acetaldehyde in the nose, use a nice healthy pitch of yeast, oxygenate well, keep it going, keep the temperature controlled. You probably do all that stuff already. But in the end, I really just want more hops. It's a nice beer. But the point of a cold IPA is to get that, the beer part out of the way almost, just so the hops can shine, get the, not too fruity, not too heavy, and enough alcohol and hops there to kind of blend together and just say, here's a nice hop aroma. And there's, the fruitiness is out of the way. The malt is pretty much out of the way because you're brewing like a high adjunct, beer that's a light body and not too challenging on the malt front. Those are the things that get in the way of your hops on any IPA. Too much malt, too much, fruitiness, too much of anything. But anyway, yeah, I started at a 32 last night. I think now, not just because it's warmer, but just because I kind of figured out what that was, that odd thing, a little acetaldehyde. To me, that pushes it down more like the 29, 30 point territory, where it is, it does have some minor flaws. Kind of misses the mark a little bit on the style, but it's mostly there, and it's actually pretty drinkable. I wish I had a fresh bottle of it to taste. And, as Brian thought, maybe we're getting some bottle variation, but the one I had last night, it tasted pretty good. And it was, it is cold, and that helps, but this has been sitting out all night, so this doesn't do me any real favors. I probably won't drink the rest of this, but
wow,
I just wanted to retaste it. I know, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at with that one. And I hope you brew it again, because I'd like to see the improved. Like, I can see the potential there, like the base of it. The malt bill is really good. The hops you chose seem to be pretty nice, and I just want a lot more of them, more dry hop and more whirlpool hops, what have you.
Yeah,
But,
I shoot it a 32. It doesn't taste like an IPA. It tastes like a very hoppy pseudo pilsner, but it's very bitter. It's almost aspirin in the back of my throat. That baby vomit. Maybe it's like, I don't know, man. Meat. It's meat. That meat smell.
Umami.
It's something like that, man. And so maybe it was on the yeast too long. I don't know, but it's that meat yeast kind of, yeast smell.
One man's cellar mold is another man's pencil lead is another man's meat.
Yeah.
What do you got? We're all over the place.
That's weird. Yeah, and I can maybe get a little bit of that meat. When I think back to what I smelled before, I'm not really smelling it now.
I get it all the way through, and I just poured it, and it's like I get that it's sort of in the a little bit of the palate, like a little bit cedar, pencil wood, not pencil lead, but like a freshly sharpened pencil.
Like wood shavings.
Yeah.
Maybe lick some steaks and a pencil after this.
There you go. It's not a bad beer. It's a great beer. I don't think it's a cold IPA. If you gave this to me and said this was your, German Pilsner or something like that, I'd be like, oh, okay, you didn't lager it really, but you rushed it out and it's fine. Whatever. You would drink this all day long at a brewery. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't think it's a cold IPA. From what I know, cold IPAs aren't that bitter, aggressively bitter. They're a little more mellow. And this does have, for me, kind of a lot of bitterness hanging on in the end, where I think it should be cleaned up a little bit, which I know is contrary to IPA. And I think Cooper's right, it needs a little more aromatics, but that's where I'm at with it. I think you did great. I mean, it's a super clear beer.
Beautiful.
Yeah, anyway, Colin, what's up with this beer? Tell me about it. Tell us about it.
I can't ship IPAs. I don't. It tastes great at home. They just don't. I've never been able to ship IPA, so I don't know what's going on.
So you don't get any of these. You're looking at us going like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Oh, I believe you. I've had IPAs that taste great at home, and I ship them out and just get destroyed on score sheets. My hoppy beers just do not ship well. I
It
don't know
is
why.
the height of the
Huh.
summer in California. We've had a lot of
Mhm.
100-degree weather and stuff. But yeah, I don't recall when it landed on my porch what the weather was like or had been leading up to that. But yeah, I think it's been pretty warm. It was like 100 degrees today. But yeah.
So that initial poof of aroma or whatever. So I've been in an attempt to ship my hoppy beers better, putting a little pinch of potassium disulfite for oxygen scavenging,
Huh.
and that essentially
Okay.
makes sulfur compounds. So I wonder if you open that, if it was a little bit of sulfur in there from reacted oxygen.
Maybe.
It's a thought.
Yeah, I mean, because the sulfur, I got a tiny bit and then it went away, and so I kind of thought, I mean, it just maybe a yeast product. I didn't think anything of it, but it didn't taste oxidized or damaged at all. Like it really didn't. It tastes, pretty solid otherwise.
It sounds like all the
Yeah.
hop aroma.
Mm.
I don't know
Yeah.
why that happened. Well, it doesn't take much, but
How old is the beer?
oxygen. I brewed it in May,
It's not too old.
So-
Yeah.
No.
No.
not that.
Okay. Well, let's go
yeah,
through
I'm
the
sorry.
recipe.
Didn't-
Yeah.
didn't-
No. I mean, it tastes what it tastes. I don't
Yeah.
question you guys whatsoever. So as far as grain bill, it was 59% or 7 pounds of 6-row barley, and then 5 pounds or 42% of jasmine rice. So just Thai Costco jasmine rice.
Wait, what percent of rice?
41%, 42%.
Okay.
Cool.
Can I ask why you chose 6-row instead of 2-row?
More enzymatic power,
Yeah.
since there was so much adjunct.
That's a
That
lot of
makes
rice
sense.
to convert. Yeah.
Yeah. So to mash that, so I took the rice, ground it up pretty coarsely in a food processor. So I took all the rice and 1 pound of the 6-row and did a cereal mash with that. So I started my main mash, doughed in. I actually missed my mash temperature on the main mash at 156. I was shooting for a little lower, but got that going. And then while that was resting, I took the rice and the little bit of barley, 2 quarts per pound, heated it up to about 158, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then boiled it for about 20 minutes. So I had some nice thick porridge. Dumped that back in the main mash, and then raised that entire thing to about 162 for 10 minutes, and then sparged like normal.
Is there a reason why you mentioned when we got started, right before we got started, that you like to have an excuse to brew with rice? Have you brewed IPAs before with that high a percentage of rice?
I've done American lager a lot, and they always are too malty. So I've progressively gone up in more percentage of rice. So 20%, 30%. They're just, if I'm doing like trying to brew a Miller or something like that, or a Budweiser, I don't know. When I brew it, it's just too malty. So the intent is to bring that maltiness down and get flavorless nothingness.
Yeah. No, the malt
That's
though is cool.
interesting.
And I think the jasmine rice gives it a little interesting character too, little aromatics on that side.
I wonder if that jasmine flavor, because I mean, it doesn't taste jasmine rice, like pretty much all of our listeners probably know. I mean, it doesn't taste or smell like jasmine flowers. It's just the type of rice, but it does have a little more character to it than just standard old long grain white rice, like the most blah American food you can possibly think of. I wonder if maybe that jasmine rice character is what was giving all of us a little different bit of, I wonder what that is kind of moments drinking this beer.
It's very possible.
So, okay.
I mean,
Did Cooper fall off here?
I don't know.
Oh, well.
Just
So
pretend like he's still here.
what was your hopping like?
so I did a first squirt hop of Amarillo, so about a half an ounce. And then at 10 minutes, I did 1.5 ounces of Laurel and Ella. And then I did a cool pool hop stand, whatever you call it, circulated the wort at about 180 degrees. And I did 4 ounces of Ella and 4 ounces of Laurel.
Wow.
So big whirlpool. And
Yeah,
that was
that's
it.
pretty big, right?
Those are two hop varieties that I'm really not that familiar with. So what are the characteristics you were going for from the Laurel and the Ella?
So I was trying to push floral really hard. So
Okay.
Laurel, literally lemon and floral, and they stuck it together to make Laurel. So that
Interesting.
yeah, has a really high linalool content. And then Ella is an Australian variety, one of their more floral, kind of lagery, kind of on that spectrum. I know they had their spectrum, basically the floral side of an Australian hop.
Right, that spider diagram, or whatever they call that thing. Yeah.
Spider graph.
Spider graph, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was the
that's
hop.
interesting. You know, I think that
Okay.
floral is, I love floral beers, and I think some of the, floral IPAs can be fantastic, but I think that's a really hard aroma and flavor to push hard, like you have to do for an IPA. And I wonder if that's why, for me, I wasn't getting like the hop flavor and the hop aroma I wanted from this style. And I wonder if it's just because something about that floral character doesn't like push out and stick out as much as maybe like the citrus and the tropical fruit, which is why IPAs, I think, tend to gravitate toward the, citrus, tropical fruit, dank, and not always so much the floral or the spicy.
Right. So that was kind of why I chose the cold IPA base, because there's nothing else to compete with. So that's kind of what I was trying to do. If I could push floral on an IPA using cold IPA as the base,
yeah,
that was the attempt anyway.
Cool.
Excellent.
And
Yeah,
then
floral comes across.
What was your fermentation like? What kind of yeast did you use?
So I used the WOP 833. That's the Einier strain, the German Bock lager. I do big pitch. Actually, this one I did a little smaller, but 1.25 million cells per milliliter per Plato. Pitched it at 50, and then let it rise to 55 on its own, and then toward the end brought it up to 60. So more on the traditional lager ferment side, but.
How long did you lager this for, or did you lager it?
Not long, maybe 2 weeks, something like that.
Okay. I mean, it's a cold IPA. It's a mixed style, not a lager, right? So it's not like you're violating, the brewer's code by fermenting this for 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, so OG was 62, final gravity was 23, which was odd. But the
high,
attenuation,
right?
was, attenuation.
Final gravity is 23.
Doesn't taste like it. It does dry beer. I guess that's what that rice will do.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
I was as well. I thought it was ruined. I was like, oh crap. And then I'm like, this doesn't taste like it's that high.
I mean, I made a note that it was well attenuated, I thought. Jamil talks about this on Brew Strong with some regularity, that it's whether your beer is fully attenuated, it's a sensory thing as much as it is a statistical thing. And if your tongue is telling you that it's well attenuated, then that's what you're going for, no matter what the number says. And those two things weirdly don't always sync up.
Yeah, you know what? And I think with rice beers, because I recently did like a rice lager, basically, and it finished a lot higher than I thought it did. I think that rice really does a good job thinning it out.
Yeah.
Which is a revelation, I'm sure. But I mean, is a cold IPA brewed with rice? Like for me, I would take the rice out because I think you want some more malt in there.
You don't want to take it out.
So,
I mean,
you want to take it out?
The malt bill of a cold IPA is generally like that of an American lager, or but beefed up to like 7% ABV. So it's like 20% adjunct. Typically, you could go 30. You could go 40 if you want. That's crazy talk, but you did it. But yeah, I think one thing I would say is you might want to ferment it a little on the warmer side. This is supposed to be an ale. You can brew it with lager yeast. You can brew it with Kolsch yeast or other yeast that will ferment. You can brew with ale yeast, but at a cooler temperature. But you want to go lower ale temperatures to keep the fruitiness down, but not completely absent or subdued. Otherwise, it's going to play like a lager. and this one I think did.
Yeah, it does. It plays like a lager. It plays like a not lager, properly lager.
Yeah, I think of this as
Yeah.
more like an IPA steam beer, right? I mean, it's using a lager yeast. It's not fermented at like 75 degrees or something crazy, but it's not fermented like at a lager temperature. Kind of like steam beers. It's a lager yeast. It's not fermented at ale temperatures. Fermented at like San Francisco attic, rooftop temperature, which might be 60 or something at night, right? So 55. It's not like you're not trying to get it way down like you're doing a German lager. And I think that's JP is onto something there about maybe that's just maybe that yeast didn't like being that low for that long. I don't know. Although it is an Eyinger, so it probably did like being that low for that long.
Yeah, that's kind of my normal, pretty close to my normal regime for that. Usually I pitch a little colder than that, but so again, my sample in my keg, hop presence was nice, beautiful, delicate. Again, I agree, it was more toward the lager side than the IPA side, but that's kind of what I was going for anyway.
Okay.
So I'm bummed it didn't ship well.
Yeah, it's
but
a cool beer.
Still, it was a good beer. It still worked out pretty good. It's almost like it's if you can enter this, if you could know how it's going to end up, and you can brew it and say, oh, it's not a cold IPA, it's a hybrid lager, a hybrid fucking German pil, well, whatever, I don't know, right? That would be good. Yeah, I mean, I think it was good.
Yeah, I suspect that just trying to ship this across the country in August when it's 100 degrees everywhere, and it's going to be sitting on, even if you ship it by air, it's going to be on that truck, going to the airport on your end, coming from the airport on our end. It's going to be, that truck is going to be 120, 130 degrees inside.
Yeah.
I guess with the new UPS, union agreement, they're supposed to make those trucks a little bit cooler for those guys. So they don't die,
man. They got an
literally
open door.
die in
They're
the UPS
fine.
truck. But that might help us as homebrewers too, because you're shipping beer. I don't know, maybe it's not going to be so much 120 in the back of those trucks in the summertime. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Colin, you got anything else for the boys?
I'm good. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay, cool.
He did send us beer.
It's true. All right, thanks, Colin. We'll let you go.
Well,
Yep.
I was hoping we could keep him
Thanks,
around and sip some of his beers while we talk about the cold IPA. Would that be acceptable?
Oh, is that what you want to do? Okay, we got a commercial beer.
He sent us. Did you get what canned beer did you get, JP?
I don't remember. I just
Was
put
there-
it in the fridge.
yeah,
I didn't even really
I
look.
think there was
It was JP
the one
got the
stout?
Imperial Stout. I
Okay.
got
Yeah.
I got an
Good.
IPA and an Imperial IPA.
Okay.
I thought you'd appreciate that, JP.
Yeah, cool. All
Everything
right.
else was IPAs. So
Christ, Colin, you're barred from the show. No, I'm just kidding. Are you gonna hang out with us, Colin? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
All right. Well, we'll take a break, and I'll go get my Imperial Stout at 8:24 p.m. before I have to do a whole nother show, and we'll we'll come right back and talk about cold IPA here in Dr. Homebrew. Hang on, we'll be right back. All right. Thanks for hanging on, everybody. We are here. We're talking about cold IPAs. Now we're actually going to get like a description and an example, really, verbally about what the fuck a cold IPA is, because everybody wants to know. It's the hot new style. I've had a couple of them. I hope they stay around longer than like Brute IPA did, which is a joke, because they're not that bad. They take something that's pretty good, which is a lager, and they fuck it up by making it an IPA, but it's not as bad as it could be.
Brute
do you think of
IPA
that?
that lasted about all of 6 months, and that was kind of like, to your point, Colin. In a way, I think that's maybe kind of what you were shooting for, right? Because Brute IPA was this idea that the malt just vanishes in your mouth, and you're left with like a aroma and flavor of hops.
Yeah. That's definitely what I was shooting for.
So I'm opening this Creature Comforts Brewing Tropicalia India Pale Ale from Athens, Georgia. This is cool to get.
Yep, and I've got the Scofflaw Basement IPA from Atlanta, Scofflaw Brewing.
There you go. I got the Mexican Cake from Westbrook. Imperial Stout has habanero in it, which I'm pretty excited about. All right, what's a cold IPA, boys? And we're wrapping it up here. We got 10 minutes before we
Yeah, I
start the
mean, we
next show.
talked about all the various styles of IPA, and there've been even more, juicy IPA, brewed IPA, milkshake IPA, fruited IPA, there's sour IPA, double, triple, quadruple, dry hopped, everything, there's just so many. Rye IPA, remember those?
Some of those were real good.
Yeah, and the white IPA, red, brown,
Yeah.
black, everything.
I liked, you know what? I do like rye IPA. We had one on the last show, rye Imperial rye IPA from Ben, I think.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
They were good. And you know what? I like a red IPA too. I'll be honest with you. The one from
Yeah.
Rogue was awesome. St. Rogue Red. It was great.
Yeah, I can consider Sierra Nevada Celebration to be kind of a red IPA.
Oh yeah.
And a white IPA was kind of kind of the hazy in some ways. It would typically have like some sage or something. I brewed one of those like a while back, and it was hazy and fantastic.
So why do we need another IPA? There's, so many different ones. And so, okay, well, they sell. So if somebody wanted to make a new IPA, okay. But, IPAs, we all kind of know what they're about. I mean, none of us have tasted a real IPA, like, from way back when they were like shipping them from, to the colonies from Great Britain in casks, and they had to hop the stuff up so it would survive the trip.
We have a brewery at local here that they did their best to recreate that. So they took it, they hopped it to 100 IBUs with East Kent Goldings, put a little pinch of bread in it.
Wow.
And then let it age out a little bit. And then I have one in my fridge. I haven't tried it yet, but.
Yeah. And IPAs have shifted even recently in the last 10, 15 years. They've changed. So, just style wise here, it's morphing all the time, and you don't know what it was like back then. But yeah, I mean, there's some records, but yeah, it's cool when people try to recreate that stuff. It's like, this is where this came from.
I found the webpage for Wayfinder Brewing in Portland, and they claim to be the originator of cold IPA. And wayfinder.beer/cold-IPA.
Yeah.
And they described their recipe. And it's interesting, Colin, did you look at this? Because they have 20 to 40% rice or corn mashed with all American 2-row Pilsner malt.
No, so the recipe was just evolution of me brewing American lager.
Yeah, you just came to the same conclusion for the same reasons that these Wayfinder folks did.
I think Kevin.
But I thought
that
was really interesting.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah. I did a show with him, a session show a couple of years ago. Go find it.
Kevin Davey. Yeah, he posts his recipe for that, and kind of challenges people to brew their own and do something different and unique with it.
Do you think corn is a good addition for a style like this? I mean, I feel like rice is sort of the future.
Yeah, I think corn is going to give it a little too much of that, the
corn flavor,
corny flavor, and the sulfury.
Because what do you want? You want a smooth sort of entry into the thing, right? Like I'm actually drinking the Mexican lager, Dr. Homebrew, right now. It's just delicious. It's perfect.
Of course.
Hopefully there's enough left for us to judge it next month. But there is like a corn thing, and I can't imagine that being, even though it's with a lager yeast, I can't imagine it being like backing a IPA level of like hops. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would jive well. I think the rice is sort of that it helps with that smooth malt transition.
That's what you want. And you want to dry out the body with the rice. And you could use a little bit of corn adjunct. You could use
a blend. Would a blend be good?
In IPAs and double IPAs, a lot of times they're just using sugar as the adjunct, and that's it. But this goes more to the tradition of American lager brewing, where you have that separate cereal mash, or you use flaked rice or other gelatinized grains that are just going to give you gravity without a whole lot of flavor. So yeah, it just lightens it up, kind of keeps the malt aspect out of the way of the hops.
I agree with you. And I think that, like corn, I tend to prefer the flavor of corn in beer, but that's when you want that flavor. And like a pre-prohibition lager, typically I think they're better with corn, and they're firmly bitter, and there's some hop character, but it's not like an IPA. And I think that I don't know. I think that Coop's right that if you tried to go, 40% corn in this, it's going to be, no matter how well you attenuate it, you're going to get that corniness, and it's going to give you, especially in combination with Pilsner malt, it's going to give you like a sweetness to it that's exactly the opposite of what you want. And then rather than getting out of the way of the hops, it's going to get in the way with that sort of corn flavor.
Yeah. Well, and no, another point I wanted to make too is like where the styles have evolved a little bit. IPA, for a while, IPLs were really popular, and they've been around for a good couple decades. They seem to, still be, able to be found in a number of breweries I go to, and they take longer to make than a typical, cranking out an ale for a brewery. So it's kind of a commitment, but they're fermented like a regular lager, 50 to 55 degree range with lager yeast and cold aging. They're dry hopped like an IPA, and they have a similar grain bill to an IPA, which is what, what differs with the cold IPA. Like we've been talking about, that high adjunct is the one of the biggest changes for it.
Let me interrupt you. Would you ever do rice in just a straight up IPA? West Coast IPA, whatever.
You could lighten your body of a double or a bigger IPA with rice. You could. Most of the time you just see a sugar addition or just mash really, really low. But yeah, you could.
Okay. Thank you.
But
I agree.
So the IPLs, they come out tasting a little bit like a lager. They can be a little sulfury at times, and that can kind of fight against the hops a bit. If you don't want that to shine through, get that big lager character. And, it's just kind of a weird animal where it's like, okay, try to decide what you are. Are you an IPA just, brewed with lager yeast at a cold temperature? It's, IPAs had already kind of become lighter in color, and these didn't have like super challenging malt bills either. The IPL is generally pretty light, but not like the adjunct laden version of that, so but you want to be refreshing, and if it's too strong and lager like, it's going to fight with those hops. You want to shine through. So we get to cold IPA. Wayfinder invented, as far as I know, this style. And the A in cold IPA is for ale. It's not an IPL, just brewed some different way. It's actually kind of a different animal. Most often they're going to use lager yeast. Sometimes they'll use a cool fermenting ale yeast strain like a Kolsch, like a hybrid yeast strain can be employed. The goal is to reduce the fruitiness and let the hops really shine through without leaving that sulfury lager-like character to battle against your nice hops that you worked so hard to put in there. So,
Colin, do you have much cold IPA where you're at? Where are you? What region? I don't need your address, but just your social.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. Is it cold IPA there, or I feel like it's like wit beer still for some reason?
There's not like a specific style here. I mean, our IPAs are maltier because we're on the East Coast, but there's no kind of set specific style.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Do you go out, or if you are out, do you see a lot of cold IPAs in general? Or what made you what turned you on to want to brew them? Because it's almost like the early days of homebrewing where you didn't really know what a porter was, so you had to brew it to find out what the fuck it was, or like a Weizenbach or whatever. Was it like that with you? Had you ever had a cold IPA before?
I've had some. So I know like Sierra Nevada had one in one of their variety packs a while ago.
Yeah.
And I've brewed basically pilsners, hoppy pilsners, whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
Just trying different hops, kind of with playing with Ella and Laurel and those kinds of things before. And so it's like, I've brewed some American lager as well. So just kind of tried to combine the two.
Okay. Sick, dude.
I've done a similar recipe with black rice as well. So like that Chinese forbidden black rice.
How'd that come out?
It wasn't as good. Again, I only used about 20% of the rice.
Because it wasn't American rice. Fucking traitor. Whatever, dude. I don't know. What flavors? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I don't know.
Yeah, you're good. I don't know. The black rice definitely had more flavor contribution. Maybe more earthy, I guess. I don't know.
Any color that turned your beer gray?
I was expecting dark, but it was kind of gold, a little deeper gold, maybe a tinge of purple, just kind of purpley gold.
Yeah,
that sounds cool, man.
I mean, when you do the cereal mash, it is just purple, just straight up purple.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this Tropicalia. I have to tell you, I'd like to try it from the source too, but it looks like a pretty fresh can. It looks like it was from June, Yeah, and we're in August
Yeah,
here,
we-
so it didn't ship too bad. That's nice.
Yeah, the stout's pretty good too.
I'm gonna
man.
crack the other. So Brian and H got 2 cans. I'm just gonna crack both of these just for fun. You mentioned the Bearded Iris from Nashville, Tennessee, which is one I've never seen or
Cooper, why are you like
Had?
8 miles away from your microphone?
because I'm reaching for the beer can that's over
Oh, okay.
here. I gotta open it and put it in my glass.
Hmm.
And you don't have to drink that whole Imperial Stout.
I might
Uh,
actually. I don't know.
How's
I
the
don't know. I'm in a
habanero coming
weird-
through on that?
It's there. I wish it was more, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish there was more, but I think pepper like that, it's hard to not get that green bell pepper vegetal thing. So you want to be delicate with it,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I kind of want a little more spice to it. I wonder, you know what actually would be good is like the Szechuan peppercorn in here, the kind of mala,
Yeah.
like tingly with the habanero and the flavors in here. I think that would be a great addition just to kind of take it to another zone a little bit. What do you think?
Remember
of
that
Iris,
Ed's
this
Cave
is
Creek
interesting.
chili beer from like the 90s that they put like a freaking jalapeno at the bottom
Oh,
of
yeah.
every
It
bottle?
was like everywhere in Bevma, every
And
end
that
cap.
stuff, it was terrible. And that
Yeah,
jalapeno was
did.
it was covering up that horrible lager or whatever blonde ale or crap was in there.
That's
That's
what I
all
feel like.
you drank that shit and it would just
Yeah.
like rip your face off with how hot it was.
That's what I feel like IPAs do. It just
Yeah,
covers
yeah.
up awful fucking beer. I don't know, whatever. Garth
way
is
to
in the
break us
chat,
down, JP.
and he says this is his first time catching us live, and he says that he's built up this mental picture about what we each look like, and we're 100% not like he imagined. And I don't know if
Okay.
that's in a good way or like a sexy way.
I hope that I'm far more attractive than you had pictured in your head.
I would almost be insulted if I was that. I want to be uglier than he thought. Like I really want to let him down.
I'm just closing my eyes,
'Cause
listening
then
to
he'd
your
be, then
voices.
he'd be like a nice guy. He'd be like, "Oh man, this man sounds really handsome." I'd be like, "Dude, God, I feel good that you thought I was good looking, and now you
Yeah.
know."
I think
Yeah.
do we all have faces for radio?
I know, and I'm incredibly handsome, man. All right, where are we with this conversation? Are we, Cooper? You're driving it. You're in the car.
You sound younger. Your voice sounds younger than your actual age, I think.
That's all the compression that I.
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, let's talk a little bit hops wise. The cold IPAs are often using just massive additions of the typical West Coast IPA type hops. Typical stuff you'd find in a regular IPA, but sometimes they'll lean towards some Aussie or New Zealand hops. But yeah, they're basically just a hop delivery mechanism, kind of getting everything else out of the way of those hops, get the esters down, keep it as an ale, not super lager like, keeping any lager like characters subdued as well. Those, the sulfurs and those things that just kind of stay in lagers because they don't warm up enough to release them as they're fermenting. Those are driven off. And even if you're using a lager yeast at 60 degrees, it's going to kick off a lot of that sulfur before it, it's not going to stay in that cold beer. Sulfur is kind of a volatile thing where it'll stay in a colder liquid or will absorb more of those kinds of volatile things and keep them in there as compared to a warmer liquid. So yeah, it's just get a little light alcohol sweetness. They're typically up around 7%. They're a little bit like a American lager recipe on steroids with the hops of an IPA fermented at 60 degrees with whatever kind of yeast you can get to do that and kind of kick it out. So do go to that Wayfinder site and kind of look at their recipe. The IBUs, it says 70 plus. I don't get that much. They're not typically extremely bitter, but they have an edge to them like an IPA a little bit. It's not going to be as soft or as a hazy IPA kind of a thing. But yeah, you do want to add some, they use Magnum in the boil kettle. They do add some bittering hops and some isomerized hop extract. And they do a lot of Whirlpool too. So, in this one, it's Mosaic Centennial and then dry hop with Chinook, Cascade, Amarillo. And they're using the Weihenstephaner yeast, 3470. But you can use any other lager yeast, they say. So,
Oh, sure.
but yeah, basically rice, a lot of rice with, with 2-row barley. 6-row is more traditional, like Colin said, to get more enzymatic. Well, I wonder, with 6-row, you have the husks are more compact, so you might get more husk character out of that too. I think 2-row has plenty of enzyme to convert, probably even 30-40% rice with a modern, well-made malt. It's going to have plenty of enzyme to convert that. So you shouldn't have to worry too much. You can always do a starch test if you're worried, and let it go a little bit longer if you think it's not converted. But yeah, it should work, especially if you're using flaked rice, or well ground up rice that you actually boiled or did, got gelatinized one way or another. That's more the traditional way. But yeah, with most homebrewers, they're probably going to use a flaked rice and a typical 2-row malt, and not too much in the way of any specialty malts. You don't want to get crazy there and start making it red or something. There's no red. I haven't seen a red cold IPA yet. I've seen some of them get a little darker than I might want them to be, but yeah.
Red cold IPA. That sounds a little too intense for me.
Cold rye IPA. That might be the IPA
Cold
that
rye
Jake
IPA
really
might
goes
be
crazy
sick,
for,
dude. Yeah, that'd be good. Man, when are we going to get these cold IPA variants of like that kind of shit? That'd be wild.
To me, a lot of them taste just like an IPA. That you don't really get, the rice doesn't have a lot of flavor. It's just lightens up the body like the sugar does. So it's kind of a nice trick, and it's brewed at a lower temperature to keep it is noticeably less fruity than an IPA for sure when you taste a good one. The Wayfinder I've had several times, and it's quite good. And it's not very fruity, very hop forward. There is a nice little edge of bitterness to it. It's not a wimpy beer. It's 7%, and it goes down pretty easy, light body, and then you just get the nice hops in there. So that's kind of what it's about. And there's debate as to whether is it really its own style, but they're doing something unique, and a lot of people have kind of latched onto this. And I think they're definitely, they made more of a splash than the Brute IPA or the sour IPAs or other things that have popped up over the years. They might even be kind of replacing some of the IPLs, and you can crank them out faster too. So
do people still make IPLs? I thought that died out quicker than Brute IPA.
There's a series of IPLs at Altamont Beer Works. They make Indy Pale lagers all the time. And,
they're pretty good. I like the Altamont IPLs in general.
They make one called Freedom Fuel. It comes out around the 4th of July every year.
Freedom.
It's just and then they just, it's the Fuel series. If you've seen Altamont beer that says Fuel.
Oh yeah, you talked about this last time, because it's like now they just call it a cold IPA or whatever.
So there's Cashmere Fuel or Nelson Fuel or this or that fuel, and they're all pretty good. They really do lager them. It must just be a passion project for Norby over there doing something fun that he likes to do and holding the fermenters longer than,
It is wild to me how brewers were able to take 3 little letters and turn it into like a money press with IPA.
Yeah.
Nothing sells as much as putting those fucking 3 letters at the end of it. And it's not even just like an anti-IPA rate. It's just fucking marketing or whatever.
And there have been
That's all it
fights
is.
over it too. Like,
It's insane.
Somebody's logo looked a little too much like the Lagunitas logo. They said to all their lawyers and whatever.
Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
Which you have to. And Brian, don't get Shar started on that.
Oh my God.
We'll be here forever. But you got to do it.
That whole thing, that law firm sold a lawsuit that complaint. Oh my God. I could talk for half an hour about just that complaint and why that thing went away in 2 weeks. That was a travesty.
Yeah.
But that's one lawyer's opinion.
It's like when Greg Cook got all up in arms about Keystone changing their cans to, nobody's going to take a Keystone Light and think that it's a Stone beer. Like those beers have some,
actually, you know what? I'll tell you, I won't, JP, I'm not going on too long about this. I was at the dollar store.
You got a 4-hour time limit.
But 2 years ago, I saw this 12-pack of beer that said Stone on it. And I thought, well, why is Stone making a beer I'm going to buy it at the dollar store. And I pick it up and I look at it some more. And then those tiny letters, it's key, like Stone. And likelihood of confusion, I was confused as a consumer who was fairly educated about beer. So that one makes sense. And I understand Stone won that. And that was legit.
Yeah, but also you weren't confused enough to buy it, which I think that's where the discrepancy happens.
No,
like
but
you were smart enough
consumers,
to look. Right?
Most consumers, the average consumer would
At the dollar
assume
store.
without looking. Yeah.
Yeah, I love buying light beer at the dollar store.
Oh, God, I was there with my buddy who will buy like beer at the dollar store, and I'm like, dude, come on. But that's he does what he does, or that's okay.
Did you hear the
Stone beer?
It was something like leaked conversations. It just came out. I saw it on TikTok or whatever, where there's a bunch of CEOs of brands talking about how they're raising prices because they can, because they know no one's going to bitch about it. And one of the CEOs was the Constellation brand CEO, and he's like, brand by brand, beer by beer, we'll figure it out. But we now know we don't have to leave money on the table anymore. We will just it's not a matter of should we raise the prices. It's a matter of how much can we get away with. Like, damn, dude,
man,
that feels good to know that just beer is now, well, whatever. Anyway, okay, are we done with this? Coop, did we cover everything of cold IPA? Were we informative? I feel like we just rambled, but
I'm not going to go through the whole, the recipe, and you can vary your recipe from this start, and there's a lot of different recipes out there now, and there's been some development to the style. So, go out and explore some and taste it next to a regular IPA and see what your taste buds tell you. Is this a unique, different style, or is it just, a marketing thing? But I think it's got something to it,
Yeah, I normally tell people to stay away from IPAs, but I think the style's cool. I think it's a fun little take on the style. So definitely get out there and check them out.
One thing I would say is if you're going to use any specialty malts, just use some lighter stuff like Vienna, some light Munich, maybe some very light Crystal, but and sometimes a little wheat, something like that. But you could experiment with a little bit of malt, but you're probably not going to want to go crazy there. That's in a regular IPA that you can get away with some of that stuff, but you're usually not going to find any actual Crystal or caramel wine. Like maybe the lightest touch of something if you wanted to give it a little touch more body, but the one of the points of it is to be dry. It's just I don't know. I think it's mostly just like the light lager recipe. I was looking at the notes for the regular IPA. It's like those have gotten lighter over the years where you're just, if you put caramel malt in an IPA these days, you get yelled at. But that, I see some IPAs going back towards that a little bit. Some have a little more, richness to them. I recently went to the Midwest and I was able to have, Bell's Two Hearted poured in you want the big one? Yeah. My brother and I were biking 20 miles or whatever. And so, I got a full tankard of Bell's Two Hearted Ale and it tasted so good. And that beer has some richness to it. It's not just, all the malt out of the way. So, if you want, your IPAs, maybe they'll drift back a little more towards some of the classic of what you expected in a West Coast. It might not go back to the 90s IPAs or whatever, but or the aughts IPAs, but and maybe if you want cold IPA, that's going to generally be lighter and cleaner out of the way and just the hops. Thank you, sir. So but yeah, have some fun, brew something, send us a cold IPA. I'd love to taste some more of them and we'll help guide you on it and have some fun.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. Yeah. Colin, are you leaving or are you staying?
I think I'm on the next show.
All right.
So you're staying?
Yes.
All right. Hell yeah, dude. All right, hang on. All right, thanks for staying aside, everybody. Appreciate it. We're just going to wrap up here real fast. And
do you want a genius idea before we wrap up?
Sure.
Cold hazy IPA.
No. Cold milkshake IPA.
Cold imperial milkshake IPA.
Well, when are people using? See, I liked the sort of promise of a future that Kvike was delivering for a little bit. For a while there, everyone was really hopeful because there's so many different strains and blends of that friggin' yeast. And I made a mild with a dark mild with a Kvike, and it was fucking awesome. And I feel like that style just sort of disappeared, but I feel like that could make a really killer like Imperial Stout.
Oh yeah, just
I
like
think
how
need to-
Saison was.
Yeah.
There was like a year around 2010 when Saison was everywhere and different kinds of Saison, and it was fucking awesome. And the great promise of Saison, and then it vanished.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was a while for sure. Yeah, everyone was making them, and they were good, and everyone kind of moves on because the customer's fickle. And I think at the end of the day, they always gravitate back towards IPAs.
Yeah,
that's just what it is. But I wonder how that's gonna go with cold IPA. I almost said IPL. Oh no, I was almost a heretic there for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get back to like different yeasts and stuff like that for stuff. I don't know. And like talking about it more, like have it more part of the conversation. So like a lot of craft brewers were using different yeast for stuff, but they weren't saying it. But now it's part of the marketing. Like the consumers are savvy enough now to understand that the ingredients make the beer, and so they will buy a beer based on the ingredients. Like doing those single hop beers that a lot of people were doing, and like Roger at Faction still does. I think it sort of trained the consumer to be like, okay, this ingredient tastes cool. This ingredient tastes cool. Let's blend these together. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then it's a much more of an educational thing. And I wonder if we're going to start getting that with yeast specific stuff too here soon.
Yeah. I know I'm kind of surprised in a way. I like IPAs. I'm an IPA drinker, but I'm kind of surprised that they've stuck around as long as they have, because it's a delicate product. And you usually, when you find the IPAs that I used to buy in the grocery store in the aughts, they had probably sat there for 6 months to a year to longer. And now if I get an IPA that's less fresh than 2-3 months, I'm like, oh, this is old. It's like, it's long in the tooth, and sometimes they don't put the brewed on date. They put the best by.
No.
You don't know how long they're allowing. You find something on the shelf.
That is the other side of this industry that sort of baffles me, where how much we've talked about freshness, it needs to translate into sales also. And so I think you're going to scare more people away by saying this was canned on this date. But if you're being clear, I guess, and transparent, that's the date that you should be putting on there. But a lot of people still put best by, and it's like, well, you have no fucking clue. The industry default's 6 months.
Yeah, they should put both, I think, if they want to put a best by. But
yeah, there was a great
both.
brewery that I really liked to buy their beer, which I shall not name. And about 5-6 years ago, they stopped. They took all the dates off. Period. Because I was one of those guys that would rummage through the beer store. It's like, oh no, this is more than a month old. I'm not going to buy this. And I think that's why they stopped doing it, because people would rummage around, pick the stuff out of the back. They wouldn't buy it if it was too old. And I think it kind of backfired on them, because they're not in the supermarket or the liquor store as much as they used to be back.
I doubt the average person is doing that.
I'm sure they're not.
But yeah.
Maybe that's why.
I do that. I do that as well, but it's just because we kind of know our stuff.
I do it. The only thing I do it with, for the most part, is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some lagers, maybe, but yeah. Anyway, I don't really do it too much because I don't really buy a whole lot of beer. That's probably also it too. Like I'm the asshole who gets a 12-pack of Modelo, and I was just like, okay, I'm not even looking because I don't understand. But it's interesting. I don't know, like for all like the stories that we've been taught and marketed to about from craft breweries, where it's like, know the brewer and the fresh is better and drink fresh or whatever. It's like they can have the most confusing date code imaginable. It's like, dude,
Yep.
I'm not in ancient Egypt trying to write some fucking hieroglyphics, and just tell me when it was made. Just tell me, and then you know what? Work with your distributor to
For
figure out
certain beers,
if it's fresh or not.
Yeah, it matters more than others, but for IPAs, it's crucial. You just can't. I mean, you can't age. You don't want to age them intentionally. It doesn't help.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here.
If somebody wanted to send us a cold IPA or another style of beer or a hazy IPA, they could do what? I guess they could email Brian. Which of us is Brian? Brian with an I.
Brian.
Or you spell yours with an I as well.
Of
It'll
course.
come to me, Brian with an I at thebrewingnetwork.com. Send us your beer.
I wasn't going to save you from that one. I was letting you dig your own.
Just
Mm.
yeah.
Dig
You
yourself
can
out of your
edit
own
it
hole,
out in
man.
post.
Nope.
I was
that's
curious where
staying
you were
in,
going
dog.
with that. Yeah.
This is how you learn to just say the things. You're trying to be too clever. Ask me how I know. Brian at thebrewingnetwork.com. Send him some whatever the fuck it is, emails, digital communication, and we'll get you on the show eventually. And if you want to be cool like Colin, send us a bunch of commercial beer too, because you're nice, and we'll let you hang out and listen to us bitch about nothing and waste your time.
It's been fun to
Like we
taste.
did with Colin.
The Bearded Iris has some nice tropical and some stone fruit in it. It's really good.
Yeah, I like this Imperial Stout, dude. I have not had Imperial Stout in a long ass time.
You knew you needed it tonight.
I did, man. I was in a
Your,
pissy mood. I'm such a bad mood right now.
it's improving your mood. I can tell. Like the next show is going to be so much fun.
Next show's gonna suck. I hope Colin's on the next show. That's the only thing I'm making sure. All right, everyone.
Because
hang
Colin's
on.
able to deal with your mood.
Yeah, we will be back if you're listening live. Basically, Garth and Cody. Big shouts out, big fam. Hang on tight. We'll be back. But if you're not, then go listen to the other shows. If you haven't listened to the Schlinkerla show, Garth says in the chat it's one of the best shows he's ever listened to. And my friend Tommy sent me a text. He goes, "Dude, that was probably the best podcast I've ever heard in my entire life." It's like multiple people tell us that we did such a good job.
I've had club members.
Do you know what made that a great episode?
Me.
Because Matthias was fucking phenomenal, and we just shut the hell up and let him talk. That's why it was great.
That's weird.
One of the most
I
genuine.
wonder if that's a lesson we should learn.
I nah.
Okay. All right, everyone. We're going to get out of here. Until next time. We'll see you.